2, 3. Hey, everyone. Hey. Nice to see all of you. Thank you all for coming today. Today we're going to be talking about the exciting topic of Web3. But before I get further, I'd like to thank the event host as well as all the sponsors that you see on the screen for making this event happen. As you can imagine, this event required a lot of coordination, and so to make this happen, the host and sponsors did a lot of work here. So thanks to everyone, thanks to all the speakers who come, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. So without further ado, my name is Richard. As some of you know, I am a co-founder of Area Ventures, and we are a Web3 investor. We have a preference for infrastructure as well as service layer technologies. But that's it from my side. Today we're going to have three other folks on the panel. As you can see, we have Wayne, Tobias, and Clara. Just to get started, Wayne, I'll let you, do your intro, but Wayne is a founder.
Hey guys, thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. So my name is Wayne, Taiwanese. I wear two hats now. I'm co-founder and CEO to XREX, which is a fully regulated, compliant Web3 fiat to crypto exchange and digital bank focused on serving users and small medium businesses in emerging markets, especially India, Africa, and parts of Latin America. I'm also co-founder to a DeFi stablecoin protocol called Unitas that will be launching in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Wayne. And then next up, we have Tobias, who is an investor. Tobias, would you mind doing your self-introduction?
Yes, absolutely. So thanks for having me. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm calling out of Singapore at the moment. So we run a venture capital fund called Blockchain Founders Fund based out of Singapore. We've done over 100 investments in the Web3 space, and we invest typically in early stage projects across DeFi, gaming, infrastructure, anything up to 5 million US. And then we try to work with our companies and help them scale. And our focus is definitely Asia, and we're also looking at Taiwan and other countries in the area. So yeah, thanks for having me, and excited to share insights on the topic.
Thank you, Tobias. And next up, we have Clara, who has been in the space, I think, the longest of all of us. Clara, would you mind taking it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started exploring blockchain back in 2011, 2012, and left for a few years, and then came back to this space in around 2020 to start the Filecoin Foundation. And we are working on decentralized file storage. And so if you think about large monopolies that control most of the data on the internet, it's just in a handful of 4 companies. And we are trying to give people an alternative to data storage. We're around 1/100th the cost of Amazon Web Services. And we're really trying to also be the storage backbone for most of Web3 technology. So if you own an NFT, if you are exploring and building something in the metaverse, you're already probably using Filecoin and IPFS as that storage layer. So I'm so thrilled to be here today. We also invest in a number of companies in our Filecoin ecosystem. And so there's also accelerators that we partner with, like Text, and a ton of hackathons. So we're constantly trying to make sure that we can get the smartest, best, and most talented people really thinking about decentralized storage.
Thank you, Clara, and thank you all the speakers for joining us today. So Web3 is a very nascent space, as many of you know. Right now, the penetration is around 5% globally in terms of usage, wallets, etc. So I want to get started just by asking our panel speakers today, what do you guys see as unique in this space, right? Because all of you are here, and you guys are here for the long term. What is it that has drawn you guys into the space? What's so unique? I guess we can start with Wayne, sharing from your founder's perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I've been before doing this, I was a cybersecurity professional. I did cybersecurity all the way until I completed my PhD. So when we first heard about Satoshi's Bitcoin white paper, end of 2008, immediately looked at it, understood all the algorithms, but just couldn't understand what's special about it. because it was like everything, nothing's really new. But then eventually through talking to early adopters and especially small, medium businesses in emerging markets, I really then started to understand the value of Bitcoin and how it's being used as a store of value, medium of exchange, especially in the regions of the world where the central banks are, not as strong as the central bank and the Fed, and where they really need, after their sweat and tears, after they've spent so much time selling their lives to make some money and after tax, that they can really have a good way to park that value. And if they want to leave these countries for a better country like the US, that they can actually have some financial sovereignty and some way to carry that value with them that they created. So then I started to really appreciate what this decentralization movement has to offer in terms of giving all of us financial sovereignty, sovereignty also to our digital identity, and also to data.
That's such an interesting perspective because right now as inflation is rampant, right? And so what I've been seeing also is that a lot of countries like Turkey, et cetera, that is having a lot of adoption for stable coins, et cetera, just to protect their assets and value, just like you mentioned. So it's a really interesting perspective. I'd like to shift to also Clara, since you've been in this space the longest out of all of us, there must be a reason why you stayed here. So, and what is that?
Yeah, so I truly fell in love with blockchain early on because I love security. I actually spent some years in cybersecurity. And there's really two types of people really in the early blockchain space. There were people who really were security enthusiasts, and then there were people who were very much thinking about the way blockchain can innovate for things like decentralized finance. And then there are obviously other kinds of people that used it early on for drugs, not so great use cases. But over time, what's been really fascinating is a lot of people who are building the core of what people are coining Web3, the next version of the internet, we're using much more of the security of the blockchain to be able to think about new incentive models that allow two parties to interact in new ways, right? And so for us, for example, in file storage, instead of servers being stored in one centralized location, we have over 4,200 storage providers running their own servers all around the world, including Taiwan. And this gives people an option to not necessarily have all their eggs in one basket. There's multiple places where you can back up something so important like data. And for us, at least, data is the most important currency of our time. If I were to just throw your phone into the pool, probably 20 years ago, you wouldn't care. 10 years ago, you wouldn't care. Today, you would care. You might lose all your photos, right? And there is so much value in not just photos, emails, everything else. I was also talking with the former CEO of the South China Morning Post a few months ago. And he said the most important thing that they have at the South China Morning Post is their archival storage. All the data for all the previous newsletters and newspapers that they had, that is their most important asset. And that is a lot of what people are thinking about, is using the security of blockchain to be able to think about affordable ways to keep data accessible to everyone. So that is my why. I also spent several years in the US government, actually focused on homegrown extremism and election security, specifically working on issues like information operations. And there's a lot of use cases in blockchain technology I'll talk about later that helps with information integrity. You can prove that a photo was taken at a particular location. You can prove that something came from a particular source. So for me, this is so important for us to continue to innovate and push the boundaries of making sure that the web is open and a place where everyone can access credible information.
That's amazing that you mentioned that because as we are entering this age, a lot of people are very afraid about what any organization can use their data, or if it can be leaked or hacked, like what happened, let's say, at Facebook, et cetera. So this tamper-resistant way of storing your file is absolutely very important in this day and age. I want to shift our attention to Tobias as well. Just coming as an investor, what is keeping you in this space? What do you see and what do you invest in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think besides all the sort of obvious benefits the technology is doing, which has been described already, for me, what is a big factor of keeping me in the space is actually the people, right? So I do think that especially everyone who's got into the space early is really convinced of the benefit of what the technology can do in terms of financial services. We talked about data, we talked about storage. I mean, this whole decentralization space is really going back to the people and giving back what essentially should be theirs, and giving everybody essentially a way to participate. And you have a lot of very, very, very strong early innovators in the space. I mean, for the most part, obviously there are some who are just there for the money, but if you look at it from a developer perspective, if you look from people's conviction, especially everybody who's been in the space for longer, they're really in here because they want to use this technology to bring innovation into something which should be disrupted or should have been disrupted a long time ago, because it obviously has challenges as in the current form. And as an investor, especially if you do early stage investments, founders is a very, very big part of how we analyze a business, right? Because there's only so much data we can look at to or put our hands on. So a lot of the convictions we're going to have is about, can a founder execute? Are the founder really the ones who are going to bring this business to new levels? And we see amazing founders in the space, people who are here with a very, very strong conviction that this is going to be the next technology, this is going to be the next wave, which will solve challenges we have. At the same time, we as a fund, we look at the space very diversified, right? I mean, of course, in the end, we have to make a return for the fund. So that's why we try to look at all sorts of angles which needs to develop to actually, make this space a new innovation wave, right? And there's a lot of challenges, right, from an infrastructure perspective, from UI UX, because at the same time, with having so many early adopters and it's driven by so many developers, it makes the space sometimes not as user friendly as we wanted to have it. So that's why we as a fund, we're looking for the next businesses who can bring the billion people into crypto, right? And that's obviously a lot of different sub-pieces around it. But I think once we hit that stage of making it friendly, of making it interesting for everyone, then I think we're going to be in a very, very interesting track of making this technology changing everybody's life, not just from what you've heard, but most people are actually going to be using it on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's where it's interesting, right? Because a lot of people talking about blockchain and crypto, and they heard about the benefits, but they've never really experienced it, right? Because only so many people right now are using this technology. And I think it's our aim and our need as an investor in order to change that. And I think with so many great developers and founders in the space, capital needs to come in now, and we need to focus on what's there for the user, and we need to make it as user friendly as possible in order to bring in the next, billion people into the space and really, really grow it from an intrinsic perspective. And that's really what keeps me in the space, of being part of that journey, being part of this development, and of being as supportive and helpful as possible.
Thank you so much, Tobias. And you mentioned a very interesting perspective where not everybody realizes the benefit of using blockchain. And I want to shift our attention a little bit, and also as well as bringing in the Taiwan perspective, especially for Clara, because Filecoin Foundation is currently doing some work with Taiwanese government, I believe. And so, Clara, could you speak to how Taiwan is using blockchain, how you guys are helping out?
Yeah, I will say we're not officially working with Taiwan, but our technology is open and available for anyone to use. And so this was actually a really amazing story, because I did not even catch this until this was announced in the news. But on August 27th, Taiwan actually announced a new digital affairs ministry. And Audrey Tang, she's the head of the ministry. I actually met with her around a year and a half ago when I went to Taiwan. And she apparently is using our technology, IPFS, to prevent denial of service attacks. And so today, cybersecurity, you can imagine if it's too centralized, it makes it more vulnerable. Right now, Taiwan is also in an information war with China, and there's a lot of tension there. And so it was really, really amazing that the Ministry of Digital Affairs, they started to just adopt IPFS technology to really think about fostering and boosting the cybersecurity practices there. So those are just one example. Another really great company based in Taiwan that is using our technology is called Numbers Protocol. They actually have a service that allows what I mentioned earlier, you to take photos and verify the source of the photo. And the photos automatically get stored using our technology. But we've used that technology in instances like when journalists need to prove that a photo wasn't something that was altered over time. There's been a lot of use cases that have been incredible, like I said, from the information integrity front.
Thank you so much for sharing. And as you can imagine, that blockchain is very centered in terms of cybersecurity and Taiwan's overall defense strategy. I also want to shift attention a little bit to also Taiwanese industries in general. And also wanted to shift the voice to Wayne. Since you're a founder, what are some of the benefits that blockchain can bring, and how could Taiwanese industry collaborate and join this trend?
Yeah, for Taiwanese industries, I think for many of you, maybe Web3 is still foreign to you, and you're thinking, what's in it for Taiwan and what's Taiwan's advantage? So, but this topic is very close to me because we're a Taiwanese company and we have now about 80 people in Taipei. And I really feel that Taiwan has a lot to offer in this Web3 movement. When we started 4 years ago, we wanted to build a regulated, compliant cryptocurrency exchange to help small and medium businesses in emerging markets access US dollar liquidity, which is really difficult for them. And we saw the opportunity that's introduced by stablecoins such as USDC and USDT. And we also saw that Taiwan had a really strong banking industry, and we could together form teams and offer great US dollar liquidity through our Taiwanese banks with the support of the Taiwanese Central Bank to these SMBs in India and in Africa, right? But then we needed an endorsement because we knew that we were going to have to work with regulators and central banks in these emerging markets. So during our seed round, we went to the Taiwanese government and we said, well, this is what we want to do. It's a new technology, and it's going to be great for our Taiwanese banking industry because we're going to help them, work with them to bring their services to emerging markets. And it's also going to be great for the Taiwanese brand, right? Because they're going to know that we're a Taiwanese company and we're going to become their most important digital bank. So the Taiwanese government ended up participating in our seed round, knowing that we're building this type of exchange and also taking an observer board seat, right? And 4 years ago, I don't think, we're probably one of the very few startups that's doing this type of topic, knowing that there's going to be regulatory issues, but that's directly invested by a government. And this really gave us a very strong endorsement. So fast forward today, we've received multiple licenses in Canada, in Europe, about to receive a major license in Singapore. We're working great with regulators, and it all came from the Taiwanese government's strong support. Our pre-A round last year, again, was led by Taiwan's largest banking group, also one of the largest public companies, Zhonghua Kaifa, right? So, and when they invested in us and took on a board seat, they told us, look, guys, if you get into regulatory trouble, the regulators are not going to find you guys, but also find us big time, right? Because we own a bank, we own a security firm. So let's all work this out well together. And their endorsements really helped us as well. And now, you know, this time, like with Ethereum merge, and we had to be down for 2 hours. And we hear all these small medium businesses in India reach out to us and say, can you guys just not be down, because you cannot be down, right? We need you guys to do business. And it was a great feeling. And they also know now they're very aware that come February is going to be Chinese New Year, and we're going to be closing down for a few days, and that's going to impact their business, right? It's very rewarding to feel that you can build a company from Taiwan doing blockchain-related technology and working with Taiwanese banks and introduce something that's this type of financial service that is so critical to small and medium businesses, emerging markets that would otherwise has always had, past 100 years, so much difficulty accessing the US dollar, which is critical for them to be on the equal playing field when doing commerce, when importing masks, mass manufacturing machines. We've helped so many of these businesses fight for masks early on during COVID, and got so many masks and machinery imported into India because of our services. I feel that coming back to the Taiwanese advantage, I feel that the Taiwanese regulators are actually in practice extremely friendly to this industry. And I also feel that now, I think partially because of the government's open-mindedness and initiatives to support this industry, now we see large enterprises, and I know a lot of you here are also falling into this category. We have major Taiwanese public companies and brands right now trying to figure out their Web3 strategy. And I'll give you another example. Together with Taiwan's largest business media, 天下杂志, 天下学习, we have just created the world's first online masterclass that itself was produced and will be operated and sold entirely in a Web3 manner. Okay, and that's the first in the world, I'm pretty sure. So let me explain. Today, you can buy this class directly online from 天下杂志 or 天下学习. But come October end, they cannot sell this class anymore. From then on, for the next 12 months, whoever wants access, who wants to purchase this class, can only go to people that have previously purchased this class, all of whom will receive an airdrop, an NFT called Nebula 22, that will allow them to mint out NFT tickets that's redeemable to this class. So what happens is then you'd have to go, for anybody who's interested in this class, come November, you'll have to go to somebody who's already purchased, who's already gone through this class, who's received that NFT, and ask them to mint out a class ticket for you to then use that NFT and go to Tianxia's online platform to redeem your class. It also features a complete white paper that's already published on Gitbook. So can you believe that 天下杂志 has published their NFT tokenomics white paper on Gitbook, right? So for you guys to learn about the tokenomics. And I also know that other than 天下, there's many other major Taiwanese brands that are looking at the Web3 opportunity as a way for them to build international global brand, and for them to create community-led growth and to really engage with their communities. So all of these are advantages that Taiwan has to offer for the Web3 community and for the industry.
Thank you, Wayne. You touched upon so many strong strategic benefits of Taiwan for catching on to this new trend. I do want to shift attention a little bit to Tobias, since Tobias is an investor. He's in Singapore, so he gets to have this purview of what's going on in Asia, et cetera. I want to ask you, Tobias, what do you see as the strategic benefit in Asia? What's the unique position for Taiwan to capture onto this trend?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So we came to Asia for a very specific reason with the fund, and didn't go to the US, or didn't go to any other jurisdiction. And that's because Asia is, in our opinion, in a pretty good spot, right? So first of all, Asia has a lot of really great talent in the Web3 space, a lot of great developers, which are very scarce and also getting really, really expensive at the moment. It is across, or basically surrounded by, countries who have a very positive stance, or for the most part, a very positive stance towards crypto and Web3. And it has a lot of capital, right? And especially countries like Singapore, Hong Kong before have positioned themselves as a hub for family offices, for asset managers, and of course also venture capital funds. And with now the shift coming from not copying technical solutions anymore, but actually driving true innovations across a lot of different countries, be it Taiwan, be it Vietnam, be it Singapore, it becomes a really, really interesting target for US funds coming now towards Asia and setting up their headquarters or setting up their subsidiaries here. A lot of angel investors, a lot of service companies use this region for setting up their hub or their entity. And I think Taiwan is in a very, very good spot of having a lot of talent in the space, right? So we monitor our deal flow very, very closely. For example, every company we ever look at, we fill in a very quick form, which gives us some understanding of where they're coming from, where they set up the business, if it's what kind of background the founders have, what solution they're building. And if we look at this, and I just looked at the data a couple weeks back, our deal flow from Taiwan, especially with very, very strong CTOs across DeFi, gaming, and the whole Web3 space, has increased by 8% in Taiwan over the last 3 months, right? Which is the biggest increase across any country you have seen. And I think that's really beautiful to see, right? I think now with Hong Kong being a bit more troubled in that sense, and Taiwan carves out to be a really good spot, but I do think that this is still unknown to the world in a sense, right? Most of the people who think about blockchain talent, who think about crypto hub, they think about Miami, Dubai, and Singapore, where I do think that Taiwan needs to get a lot more attention, because really, really strong founders and great projects are coming out of Taiwan right now. But they just haven't reached that stage yet of being accepted or being heard. And like I said, with that increase in terms of deal flow, with that increase in terms of projects, with the number of talent in the market, and with still being seen as a very solid hub for funds, I think Taiwan really has to capitalize on that and just bring more branding and image into the world of really being a tech fostering nation. And I think then Taiwan is already in a really, really good spot from a geopolitical, from a geographical, and from a governance perspective of how they look at the space, of how innovative. You just mentioned, the examples in the private market, but there's a lot of examples in the public market as well, especially also from a governance perspective of how they utilize and are going to utilize this technology moving forward. So we are very, very bullish on Taiwan in terms of investing and seeing future companies and great founders coming from there. And that's why we also came to Asia, and we carved out a specific portion for Taiwan and Taiwan related projects. We were just really excited about seeing this grow, and we really hope that the government will use that and use this opportunity in order to capitalize and push Taiwan forward, because I do think that probably like in 5 years from now, we're going to see Taiwan emerging as a hub very, very similar to Singapore, for example, or maybe even Dubai, in terms of how favorable it is for projects in the Web3 space. And they have really all the right nutrients in place, so to say, as a nation. And I think it just needs to be seen, right? And capital needs to be coming to the space And I think that's kind of like what we are very excited about, and hope that this is going to happen, or increasingly going to happen moving forward.
And I just want to add that I had heard many months ago that Vitalik is actually thinking about setting up the Ethereum Foundation headquarters in Taipei as well. So there's a lot of movement around there. I do want to shift gear a little bit now that I hope I've convinced all of you that Taiwanese government is supportive. We have a strong labor force. There's a lot of industries that can benefit from jumping onto this trend. But then the question is, what makes a successful Web3 project or blockchain project, et cetera? And I actually want to ask Clara, because you've been in the space for the longest time. So, and Filecoin is a really successful project. So I wanted to ask you first to, for you to shed your perspective.
Yeah, I think the most important success factor for any Web3 company or ecosystem is absolutely the community. For us, we're actually having a huge conference just in less than a week in Singapore to bring together all of our Asia ecosystem. We have a lot of people from Taiwan, we have a lot of people from China, from Korea, and ultimately the ecosystem is as strong as the people that you're able to engage. I think what you said earlier is exactly right. There is so much talent potential that is coming out of the Taiwan workforce. When I went to Taiwan a year and a half ago, I met so many incredible people pushing the envelope of Web3 that I think a lot of people don't realize. They were doing it from Taiwan. People Pleaser, who's an NFT artist based in Taiwan at the time. Kevin Lin, who was the co-founder of Twitch, he was also in Taiwan. He started a company called Meta Theory that, full disclosure, I invested in, but it is also in the Web3 space, right? And so you see a lot of leadership as well for amazing startups that have really been leveraging the talent pool. Alex Liu, who is the founder of MyCoin, which is the largest crypto exchange in Taiwan, one thing that was really great in sitting down with him was how passionate he was about the environmental movement, and not only just doing things at the minimum, but he wanted to go above and beyond, right? And that's something that we also care deeply about at Filecoin, is thinking about how we can do things with environmental impact at the same time, making sure that we're thinking headstrong with how we can not only follow, but also lead the way for solutions around climate change. And so, for example, all of our data centers, you can see all the energy use at any point in time. Instead of ESG reports being an afterthought, we very much are tracking our environmental footprint one by one. We have also given grants out to people who have set up entire data centers using solar panels. So there's so much that I think is so exciting, not only in Taiwan, but just I personally think just in terms of innovation, in terms of talent pool, in terms of how smart and hardworking the current talent is. The other factor that is really important is right now there is obviously heavy crypto lockdown in China, and Mandarin is such an important language skill to have. And unfortunately, it's really hard to recruit for people with Mandarin backgrounds. And there's a whole set of really smart engineers who know Mandarin that I think all crypto projects right now are all looking for to be able to touch the Asia market. There are also a number of investment funds. When I was in Taiwan, I also met with someone who works at Dragonfly, and he loves staying in Taiwan. Dragonfly Capital is a VC in the Asia region, but he was telling me there was a number of people on his team based in Taiwan just because of the lifestyle and also the location to China without necessarily some of the restrictions that are based there was also very optimal. So there's so much exciting things happening. And I think ultimately it comes down to talent and community. We want to have the smartest people working on the hardest problems. As Tobias was saying, blockchain is not easy. User experience is not easy. The shipping of new blockchain protocols, projects, implementations is constant. Crypto is always on, and we need the smartest and best people fully engaged to participate.
Now, Wayne, as a founder, what do you see as what a successful founder should possess in order to start in this space?
I think starting something new in this space, you don't necessarily, I mean, not only for founders, entrepreneurs, but also for many of the big businesses present today. If you're trying to create something new, I think what's difficult and what you really have to get right is you have to understand the ethos, right? The philosophy. And to understand that, if you're a Taiwanese entrepreneur, or if you're creating something new in your big Taiwanese brand or your big company, I think it's very important that you come out here. I think the only way for you to really understand the ethos is to know the community and to know the people. And a lot of these people are either here or in New York, in a few hubs, right? So you want to really spend a lot of time here. You want to also bring out your top level manager out here, because otherwise you're going to have a much more difficult time to try to sell them what Web3 is and why it is the major opportunity for Taiwanese brands, especially in a post-COVID world. And I also like to shout out to, the many of, Taiwanese Americans working here. I really think that you guys can make a difference if you spend some time to look at, Taiwanese companies that are having their Web3 initiatives or Taiwanese Web3 startups. You don't need to just always be very frustrated about SEC, about Gary Gensler, Elizabeth Warren, because you have other options, right? Taiwan is a country that's just very open-minded and very supportive of Web3. I'll give another example. A few weeks ago, we had our last board meeting, and on the board meeting, we had the Taiwanese government, the National Development Fund, which is directly operated by the government. It's a government-run VC fund. And also Zhonghua Kaifa, right, as our board members. And on the board, we said, okay, it is time. We've completed our white paper. We're going to be launching this DeFi stablecoin protocol, and we're going to be minting stablecoins pegged to emerging market currencies. And we're going to be minting stablecoins pegged to the Indian rupees and Turkish lira and the Argentina peso. And these central banks are going to be very alerted, and we're going to have to work with them, right? And the board said, okay, go do it, right? That versus what you have here with the SEC, I really think that you'll be creating so much value and impact, and you will be writing Taiwanese history if you take another path.
Thank you, Wayne. And for Tobias, this is my last question before we open up to the floor for questions. But the question is, as an investor like yourself, what differentiates between successful Web3 project versus the not successful ones?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of points which make that successful recipe in a sense, right? So the number one point, as I mentioned before already, is the team, right? And I think there's differences within the team. So sometimes, we want to see that those people are long-term committed to the project, right? If the first conversation we're having on the call is, what are the lockup periods, it's another token and all these kind of things, then that's already a big red flag for me, right? Because in the end, I'm a strong believer that this business still needs to solve a problem, right? This business still needs to be beneficial to your users. Because in this previous bull market, we had a lot of projects getting investment just because people were speculating on a token getting viral, right? I don't think that's the mindset we should have in the space when investing in projects in the Web3 space. I don't think there should be a difference to Web2 in that sense, right? I mean, we're still looking for great businesses with great founders. So the founders being committed, the founders being, 100% of understanding that this is a long-term journey is one of the most important factors to me. And the second part, it is the community, right? I think especially as we are still in the early adopter phase, the community is very, very important because crypto has or is known to have a very strong community, right? So if you have a good project, the community will be helpful. It's not, the community shouldn't be seen as just your early adopters. They're really shaping the product with you because they're getting extremely engaged and they're loving the product and they're trying it out, and you should listen to the community as a founder. But the community needs to be genuine. A lot of people are buying followers. A lot of people are just telling us, okay, we have 100,000 Twitter followers, we have 50,000 Discord followers, but it doesn't really say much about the engagement. And the community is only good if they're really engaged, if there's a lot of activity happening, right? If people are reaching out on behalf without receiving anything because they're just really excited about the project. This might change over time as we hit mass adoption and a lot more people coming into space, but especially now as we're developing solutions for something which is still in early phases, community is a big driver for value and a big driver for improvement and feedback, right? So it's about building this community, and this isn't done overnight, right? A community takes time to build, it takes time to be engaged, and they need to see a clear value add. As a third part, I think you as a founder really need to ask yourself, is my solution requiring a blockchain or a token, right? Because a lot of projects we're seeing, they could also work as a Web2 company. There's nothing wrong about it, right? Not everything needs to be blockchain and crypto, in my opinion. Sometimes it just adds an additional layer of complexity. So that's why it goes back to actually understanding of what kind of problem are you solving and why is this technology relevant for you, right? Because I think we passed that stage now, or hopefully past that stage now, that the pure name dropping of that technology increases valuation of businesses. I think now investors got a bit more careful in understanding, okay, is it actually necessary? Is that, where's the value add, where's the utility of that aspect, right? A lot of tokens which have been launched previously didn't have a lot of utility, and that's why they've seen strong downturn over that sort of bear market in the last month. So I think asking yourself really about what problem am I solving, what technology is the best, and if you think that Web3 or blockchain or crypto is the best technology for you to solve that, then I think yes, absolutely go for it, right? And I sort of the fourth part is always the market. As an investor, we need to have return our invested capital. So we need to understand that the market is large enough for that solution to work. And that could either be focusing completely on a niche market, which might be slightly smaller, but at least to capture a larger part of it, or you're going to go after a larger market and get a smaller part of it, but that might still be relevant. And especially as larger the venture capital fund gets, market becomes a more and more important topic. But summarizing, it's really one, the founders, right? It's really second, the community. Third, it's about the solution and the actual need for the technology. And fourth, it's about the market and the market you're moving in. Of course, that could expand over time, but putting a number towards that and making it sort of tangible for any investors looking at your company is a very, very important part of it. And I think that's sort of the magic formula. And sometimes one of these 4 points might be stronger or weaker, but overall, I think if you're able to bring this to the table, I think you have a really good success factor. And then it's all about execution, right? How well are these 4 factors moving together into making this business a reality? Yeah, that's kind of like the 4 points I would highlight if I would describe your questions in a short paragraph.
Thank you, Tobias. It's really interesting that I think all 3 of the panel speakers today talked about how community is one of the central tenets to make a Web3 project successful. So that's really interesting. I think you all can agree on that. That's a core aspect of Web3 projects. Now, we have 5 minutes left, and so I do want to open up to the floor and see if anyone has questions. Feel free to you want to ask any of us? Yes.
Go. Got it. Very good question. Thank you. So the question is regarding the regulatory challenges of this industry, especially given what happened to the OFAC sanctioning of Tornado, the protocol, and so what is the future of this industry? Are we going to have a short legal arbitrage window, which is going to eventually close, and then everything has to be very strictly regulated? So our experience has been, and it's been a journey for me. We've hired a really senior compliance officer out of a major bank. We've also hired someone directly out of the Fed, Michael Shing, joining us. Prior to that, he spent 11 years at the Fed. So my learning so far has been dealing with regulators and being compliant is a skill set, right? And I feel that the majority of this industry is not equipped with that skill set. For example, the highest level of challenge is with sanctions, right? And the US government cares mostly about sanctions, right? So when you're operating a Web3 protocol or application, then there's going to be securities issues, investor protection, there's going to be tax issues, there are going to be Forex stability issues, there's also going to be sanction, terrorists, this type of financial crime compliance issues. And what we saw with Tornado is really that too much money has been too much North Korean illegal money has been laundered through Tornado, right? So it falls under the category of international sanctions. And that is the most difficult issue to deal with. So I personally, I still see that the nature of DeFi and why I like DeFi and why we're launching the DeFi protocol is because DeFi today still offers plenty of room for innovators to not be limited by sophisticated regulation. There's still plenty of room. Of course, when it comes to sanctions, it is really hard not to comply, especially when really what the Treasury is trying to say, we have an issue with the North Koreans, not with Tornado, but with the North Koreans, really, right? So there are ways for you. Do I agree that USDC Circle just immediately did what they did? I don't think it was necessary. So there is many ways for Web3 teams to work with regulators, and you don't have to, shut everybody down. You can still have a lot of censorship resistance without running into issues. You just have to understand. You have to have professionals that help you do this, that really understand how to work with regulators, and when to be compliant and when to decide, well, we're going to be stepping on the line. So I personally feel that there's going to be plenty of room. I also feel that when it comes to prosecution and actually getting teams sentenced, especially DeFi teams, I personally feel it would not be so easy. Yeah, but you have to be equipped with the skill set.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Wayne. Yes, go ahead.
I can also jump in very quickly. I spent several years working in US government. I did also look at blockchain policy, but I will say that unfortunately, the US government and many governments around the world are not necessarily the most tech literate when they think about creating tech policy. And so I just think it's so important that we get experts in the room that can really think about, we obviously don't want bad things to happen, but in the case of Tornado Cash, I think it was not necessarily the most well thought through or implemented policy out there, and obviously had a huge backlash on, Coinbase and a few others are obviously suing the U.S. Department of Treasury over the sanctions. So one of the efforts that we recently announced this past year is we are supporting an initiative called Tech Congress that brings technologists, entrepreneurs into Congress to actually work on tech policy. We're also one of the biggest supporters of the Blockchain Association to really make sure that there's sensible policy that is being pushed. Actually, earlier this week, we also announced something called the Public Data Commons, which is just basic information for the public that we should always make affordable and accessible to people, starting with open data. And so we've been working with mayors and a number of city officials just to not only educate them on what decentralized storage and crypto and blockchain is, but also helping them interact with it in a way that they really think is great from a civic tech standpoint. So I think it takes different kinds of education, different kind of voices for nonsensical policy to not necessarily continue to persist. And we still need to educate because there are so many different kinds of blockchain projects that do very different things. It's one thing to mix up some Web3 infrastructure project with some DeFi transactions. And sometimes people who don't keep up or are not that well read into it, they blur the lines on assuming one thing is the other. We've obviously also seen even the lack of Congress understanding a lot of basic Web2 tech with during the Mark Zuckerberg testimony a few years ago, there was just so much limited information about how the internet works. And so for me, I think it's more than just thinking about how we do it right. We have to start with education, and everyone has to play a part in raising and helping our politicians understand these issues better.
I think centralized organizations, take confidence by looking at teams such as FTX, right? You'd say, oh my God, all these services that FTX as a centralized organization, having a physical office, how can this be legal? But they are legal. They just spend a lot of effort to figure out how and in which jurisdictions to operate from to make everything legal.
I believe Tobias has something to say. We do have to wrap it up.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add to Jara's point because I couldn't agree more. I think the problem right now that is all the government taking is just reactive, right? Something happens and then people try to avoid that. But I think it needs to be proactive in a sense that we actually try to understand what the benefits and what the challenges are, and then make a decision together with the people who are actually in the space, like Clara, for example, and Filecoin and all, because they really understand of what's happening. And if you look at, there are a lot of legitimate organizations out there, right? FTX might be one of them, and many others. And I think it's about understanding the space together with them to make proactive decisions. That's something that doesn't happen. But I think that's the key point of moving forward. And as an investor, I do think that more regulatory certainty is long-term bullish for the space. It might be short-term or medium-term, a bit more challenging, but if everybody knows the lanes to navigate, and if these lanes are created with entrepreneurs and investors and ecosystem builders together, then I think it's going to be long-term very, very positive for the space.
Thank you, Tobias. And thanks for the question, and thanks for all the attendees. As mentioned, we will wrap it up today, but we'll be around here, so feel free to approach us and ask us any questions. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.